Does everyone want to do just like a quick introduction? Kate, would you like to start maybe where you're from, where you're, well, I guess you wouldn't know where you're teaching, but just where you're from and what your background is.
Oh, me?
Oh, sorry, there's two Kates.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. My name is Katie. I actually grew up in Colorado, so in Boulder. And, well, yeah, I guess. And my background is actually in teaching. I studied foreign language and ESL teaching in university. So,
Nice.
yeah.
That's my background too. I'm a Brit, and I taught French and Spanish in the high school over here in Buena Vista, Colorado, for 11 years.
Wow.
Etc.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that I get it. Nice to meet you, Katie.
You too.
Right, Kelsey, do you want to go next?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm Kelsey. I'm from New York, and I studied secondary education in history.
Nice. Nice. That's very cool. So that was in New York?
In Arizona.
Oh, okay. At ASU or NAU or?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I am facilitating this webinar, and I've been the one emailing you. My background is in civil engineering, so I am just kind of here to learn and facilitate the conversation. But I'm excited to learn about the opportunities. That way, if other Fulbrighters have questions, I can answer them.
That's super. That's great, Courtney. Thank you for being on the call. I appreciate that. And engineering is a field in which we need more teachers.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all relevant.
You're right. You're right. Okay. Kate, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kate, and I actually studied Japanese and international relations. So that does not sound related to education, but lately I've been kind of thinking about, David is laughing at me, about counseling for like higher level students in the U.S. because I went to a magnet high school, and I teach at a school here in Korea for students who are kind of like advanced level. So I've had a lot of really interesting one-on-one conversations with them, kind of giving them advice, and so I've been kind of more interested in the field of education lately.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you're here, Kate, and we can kind of explore some ideas, and you can kind of feel if, well, does it sound like a good move for you in general, and would this program be a good fit for you specifically? Because there's lots of different ways to get into the area that I hear you're interested in. So let's just chat some more. Great. And David, I know your name simply because it came up under your box earlier.
Good. My reputation precedes me.
There you go. Be careful with that one.
Yes. My name, of course, is David. I studied at St. John's University in New York City. I studied English literature and some random minors in international studies and anthropology. I am very interested in being a teacher, specifically ESL teacher, for the foreseeable future, but maybe not my whole life, maybe like 5 or 10 more years. And so I'm teaching in Korea now, and I really enjoy it, but I don't have any formal education training. And so I feel like I want to have that kind of training, possibly with a master's, and that's why I'm interested in this program, possibly.
Yes, sure, great. And you know, possibly is a great word to really launch into things because, like I mentioned to Kate, it's you know, this is an important decision, important choice. It'll impact certainly the next 2 years of your life, if not the rest, in terms of you know whether it's the right timing for you, whether it's the right fit for you, you know, and the content then, you know, moving forward as far as, well, is this really going to set me up for what I want to do? And so, you know, let's just talk around that. And just to give you a little background on me, and in the sense of, you know, I'm a Brit and I taught foreign languages and so forth. I also stepped out of the classroom in 2001 and was hit with this question, you know, if I'm a third grade teacher and I only have English and I've never been outside of this country, how can I teach, how can I talk to the kids in my classroom? because as you all know, I mean, to me, you're all getting the best qualification that you can get doing the work you're doing right this minute where you are, frankly. You know, because the diversity and the you know, the multi ethnic and multicultural dynamics of all of our school districts today in America are very different than they were even just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So, you know, whatever experience you're having now is truly adding tools to your toolbox to be able to come back and serve kids and work with communities and build those school community bridges, family bridges, and those academic tie-ins. So, you know, I just want you to know that's where I am. So I actually wrote the culturally in Colorado, just a little, you know, we're using the word ESL, which of course is what it is. In Colorado, in order to be able to teach in a public school, you have to have a license to teach, and that's the same in all 50 states, obviously. And so in Colorado, there are different endorsements that you can add to that teaching license. So you could, for example, in the cases that I'm hearing, you could have an initial license in business to teach business at high school, say. And then you could add to that an endorsement to teach culturally and linguistically diverse students. Or you could have an initial endorsement or initial license in English, in language arts, secondary language arts, or in history, or in a foreign language. And then to that license, you add an endorsement of your choice, or several as you move through your career. So in Colorado, they call it CLD as opposed to ESL, as a teaching credential. Okay, so that refers to the culturally and linguistically. Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't realize I was right under the speaker. That was clever. You have a CLD endorsement that you would add to an existing license. Okay, and that would set you up as a CLD sort of specialist, if you like, in your building or in your school. And I'll come back to that moving forward. So as far as, you know, I just want to pick up on a couple of things that I've heard. I think we're all teachers. Someone said they didn't have necessarily an educational background, but you do. I mean, just because of life and travel and exposure to different ways of thinking, all of those things make you a good teacher for our kids, no matter what form that takes, whether you're licensed or whether you're in the counseling office or whatever or if you're a parent, I mean, you know, or a friend. So I think that's important to recognize. That's already in you, and you're already doing it, sort of a thing. But I also recognize that teaching today is a very different field from what it was 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, not only because of the diversity of the students, but also because of the demands that every single state and the federal government, frankly, is putting on us in our profession. And so I think the more ways that you can think about your profession and your practice, the better. And so, you know, to come back to David's point that he's already doing it, and I'm sure doing an awesome job connecting with kids and really helping them with a few more tools in your toolbox as far as very specific strategies, resource bases, ways to think about dynamics of classroom interactions and those kinds of things, you're going to enrich your ability to really focus in on what's important and get those kids' growth in their academics where it needs to be. So, you know, the way that I'm speaking is the way that we at Western State Colorado University approach our program, our teaching, and our support for our students. So, you know, I'm looking at the questions that I received, and they're awesome, very good questions. I'm very willing to get very specific here in a second on these questions that have already been thrown out. But I want you to hear when I say that we are I'm going to put in quotes, a practitioner's master's degree. That is to say, not, you know, if you sign up for a master's degree, it's a Master of Arts in Education, is the official name of the degree. And then within that, there's different emphases in teacher leadership or educator leadership. One of those actually is culturally and linguistically diverse leadership. And we can come back to that later. But teacher leadership, reading leadership, building leadership at the teacher level is something that is becoming more important to employers. rather than, oh, I've just got my master's, I've just got my license to teach, give me my classroom and leave me alone. The field now requires that you network and you're collegial with a team of educating folks that support you and your kids in their needs and in your instruction. So that idea of being a teacher leader in a building is really important, and so we build that into our work with our candidates. So I guess having said that, what occurs? Is there anything that occurs to you off? Anybody got a burning question right now, or shall I launch into these questions? Or Courtney, how would you like to proceed?
If it's okay, what we normally do, so I'll read. We'll just go through the questions that I sent you, and then at the end, if everyone doesn't mind holding questions that weren't submitted until the end, and then we'll kind of have like a free conversation time. That way we get through all the questions that they submitted, and then yeah, okay. So okay, I think you just answered the first, what is the exact title of this degree? But is this program for is a master's MAT? What does that stand for?
Okay, MAT means a Master of Arts in Teaching.
Okay, right. So
and ours is a Master of Arts in Education.
Okay, okay.
So it's an MA is what you would have after your name. And then within each of those areas, and then actually I hold an MEd, which is a Master's of Education, as opposed to a Master of Arts in Education. So it's really just, you know, I mean, we are just a little background on the institution, just so that you know, and this also ties in with one of the questions, but you know, we are a 4-year, I could actually take my camera out and show you the quad here. I mean, we're a real university. We're not just like, you know, a phoenix sort of stuck in you know, the 3rd floor of an office building in Denver or something. You know, we're a real 4-year liberal arts university, thriving undergraduate and an expanding graduate program with a number of different programs besides education. So just to throw that out. So does that answer the question on number 1? I don't want to jump ahead. I tend to talk too much. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think. Okay, so we'll move on to number 2. What is the cost of the program, and are there financial aid options for a program like this?
Yes. To answer the second one, yes, definitely. You know, you will be full-time students in year 1, particularly. So the way we break our program down, I'm assuming that everybody is interested in this master's, not only because it's a master's, but also because it results in a teaching license. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that we have 2 different master's options. So I want to talk about the one, first of all, that has the licensure component to it. Because that's 43 credit program altogether. And you can do that in 2 years, or you can actually spread out the 2nd year over the next 4 years, because you have to complete it within 5 years of your initial entry into the program. But the 1st year is a pretty prescribed program, and to me that was why I felt like, gosh, if I were you, and I was in the classroom anyway, and I was interested in getting my license and 27 graduate credits towards my master's, I'd want to like do it while I'm there. So the 1st year is 27 credits towards this master's, and the cost of the 1st year is $11,950. And yes, the 27 credits would qualify you to be a full-time student and to get financial aid. If you do the next, then there's 16 credits remaining in that master's, and that leads you into, so after your 1st year of licensure coursework, then you're actually licensed to teach at the end of the 1st year, then you finish out your master's. So you can actually be employed after year 1 in a U.S. school, okay, if that's your choice. So then to complete the master's, that's when you move into the leadership track that you choose for your emphasis, and it's either a reading leader, a K-12 online teacher leader, a teacher leader, which would be, you know, a building team leader, whether it be in response to intervention or special education or reading or, you know, various teacher type pieces, or we also have culturally and linguistically diverse leadership. So that's an option for folks like you, actually. It's not an option for most domestic people simply because they haven't had the cultural and linguistic diversity exposure. or experience. But we can make an exception for the prerequisites in order to give you that leadership track in your case, if that's of interest. So the cost of those other 16 credits is $6,106. So that makes the total cost of the masters, including the licensure, at $18,110. Okay, and again, you can complete that in 2 years, or it could go 4 or 5 years, just up depending on your life. You know, we have a lot of folks who get their licensure year out of the way, and then they go, you know, time out. I'm getting married, or I just got a job, or I'm moving, or I'm something else, and I can't do anything for a year. Fine, no worries, come back in, you know, to finish out. So you have that flexibility. If you're not interested in a license, we do have a 30-credit master's, but that's really for existing teachers who are licensed and practicing in schools. Okay, so that's the other option. I won't go into that too much because that I don't think applies to you guys.
I have an Indiana state license.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have an Arizona state license.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, so you might be interested in the educator effectiveness lab. Well, shall I just speak to that real quick?
Sure.
Just because I can. So, well, okay. So if you have an existing teaching license, let me just think about this. This is brand new. See, we are movers and shakers in this office, and we want to make things relevant to educators everywhere. So the premise of that master's is that you will be in a classroom, which you will be. You will choose, it's 30 credits, and you basically choose your degree plan and your choice of courses, which again are delivered online, but they're tied in very closely with your work in your classroom with your kids. You can't get through this master's if you're not in a classroom.
Yeah.
In either case, actually, because our assignments are not just, oh, read this chapter and take the test. They are, you know, read this resource and understand this piece of practice. Now, observe your mentor or administer this assessment to a group of kids. Come back with the data. We'll discuss it. Now, go back and use your teaching strategy, and then we'll discuss the outcomes and the progress monitoring. You know, all of those practical pieces. So that's all built into the coursework. So whichever masters you choose. So if you're doing the 30-credit masters, it's still a Master's of Arts in Education. The emphasis is educator effectiveness. And so you would need to have some kind of an evaluation document or baseline coming in as an educator. So in other words, however you've been evaluated on various criteria, we use that initial baseline evaluation and say, okay, these are this person's strengths. These are the areas either of passion or where this person needs to improve. Now we're going to fit your coursework according to that. Create professional goals that you're going to achieve through the program, through this coursework and through the outcomes. And then at the end, you demonstrate that you have reached those goals with a portfolio of evidence from either yourself and or your students and or an evaluation from an administrator. And all of that equals the evidence of growth to actually get your final degree.
So can you do that with minimal co-teacher involvement then?
Yes, actually you can. I mean, you know, you still are going to need the piece that you're going to need there, depending on the courses you choose and depending on your placement. You know, if you're pretty much in a self-contained classroom and you are able to administer reading assessments and reading strategies, for example, or you know, if you want to do some improve your math instruction, if you can actually work with kids in the areas that the coursework requires, then you don't need to be in a mentor teacher's classroom as such. So you're very much more directly supported by our faculty. Okay, as you're going through that year, or again, you've got a series of years if you choose to spread it out. But what you will need is you will need to have either a master teacher or an administrator evaluate you, and include that progress monitoring in your portfolio as you're going through and as you end the year. So that's something to think about. You know, somebody who would be qualified, and obviously we'd need to give input on the person that you recommend, or who recommends him or herself as that role. But we would want to make sure that you have support on the ground as you're going through. So that's something to think about.
Dr. Jenkins, could you speak more on financial aid?
Yes.
Yeah, financial aid options and what that would look like.
Yes, this is where at the point at which I need to go to my website and find out. We have a financial aid office, and I will be happy to email you the information from our person, our expert there. I mean, the reason I'm hesitating is simply because it's not my area of expertise. But it's absolutely, if you've been through an undergraduate program in the States, it's not that dissimilar. You got to do your FAFSA. You've got to provide the documentation that they normally ask for. Student financial services. Candidates taking 5 or more credits may apply for federal loans and be eligible for repayment or loan forgiveness programs. So it's very it's a very classic university financial aid process that you would go through, and we are actually in the process, and I can't make any promises, but we are actually in the process of establishing a education graduate program scholarship process. So there could be some funding available, some minimal, I would have to say, because I don't want to give anyone the impression that, oh gosh, it's going to be free, but it's a little help, in some way for folks coming into the graduate program who would qualify and as going over and above, living outside of the country and dedicating themselves as you have, I would say, would be a good step in qualifying for that. So, I don't know exactly how, does that help, or can I send you this link and you can check it out, Courtney, or should I put you in email touch with our expert and he could answer any questions, or do you have specific questions?
If you could give me that link and then the contact information for the person who's a specialist on this, I can send that after the webinar ends, or whenever you send that to me. I can send that out to the participants.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, well then, yeah, with that being said, and I'll forward that on to everyone once I get it from Dr.
And, I hope you don't feel like I'm skirting the issue. I mean, it's right there. And it's specific, and it's so.
Of course.
Okay, I feel like you answered number 3. I guess I'll read it, and if you want to add anything else, but what types of master's degrees does this program offer? With what concentrations? Would the offered program be in just general education, or would there be options to pursue an MA focused on a particular content area? Is there anything else you want to add in regards to
No, I mean, to an educator, when someone asks about content, an educator thinks about math, science, history, English, those tend to be content pieces. We don't look at it that way. We actually have to assume at the graduate level that you already can prove that you're proficient in your content or an expert in your content when you come into our program. So we don't have graduate math courses or graduate science courses that we can say, oh, if you're coming in to teach science, this is what you do first. We're assuming you have your content or can prove content. And I can speak more to that if you'd like me to. So our Master of Arts in Education is the educational pedagogical piece, leading to a leadership track, like I mentioned. So as far as content, if you think of pedagogical content, that is teaching skill content, teacher leadership is a piece of content, and that's the skill. Those are the leadership area. Those are the areas of emphasis that we focus on.
How do international time differences affect deadlines?
Yeah, good question. Let's talk. I mean, let's just talk about that. I think the big thing other thing that I love about us, I mean, I have to say them, the faculty here, is that we're on your team. We're interested in your success. If you demonstrate to us that you're really in this for the right reasons and you really are working, willing to give it what you can and give it all you got, we'll be on your team. So if the deadline of the assignment says Sunday night at midnight, and well, who's midnight, you know, or if you know, if you have a break coming up, you know, you've got a week off right in the middle of the semester or 2 weeks or whatever, and we're kind of like, well, you've got an assignment due. Talk to your instructor ahead of time. Make sure that you are proactive in that. It's your responsibility to let them know what your needs are, because otherwise they'll assume you're you know, got the same constraints as everyone else. But we've discussed as a faculty bringing on more international students, or students who have international calendars, and we've worked with students from Korea before. We've had 2 or 3 come through our program in the last couple of years, and we've made it work as far as deadlines. I mean, instructors are even willing to sort of leave a semester section open for a few days if we need to, or open it early so that you can get a preview if you know, in terms of the semester calendar. So there are some constraints in the sense that final grades for a semester have to be in by a certain date, in December, for example, for the fall semester, and then in by mid-May in the spring semester. But you know, I think that's my best answer is let's talk about that. Do you have specifics or that I can think about and take back to the faculty, or does that really answer the concern?
It was my question, and that covered it pretty. That's what I was just curious about, like, you know, if there's flexibility or communication is open about it, like.
Yes.
And I think you answered my question well.
Good, David. Okay. And again, you know, I think we're in it for you guys, but if we feel like we're being taken advantage of, guess what? We put it away. We get in a hurry. But you know, I just love this personal communication, being able to see your face. You know, this is what it's about in education. We're all educators, and you know, we want to make it work. So.
Okay. All right, next question. How much of the program would be purely online? Would there be options to take classes on campus during a summer vacation?
Okay, good question. Currently, we do not have credit-bearing courses associated with a master's degree on campus in the summer, no. Because all of our coursework is designed to be integrated into your placement and your work with kids, we restrict our credit-bearing courses to the fall and the spring.
Okay.
However, we do have a summer session, which is an orientation to the program, and it really gives you a head start on the coursework and the ways to think about the program. You meet the faculty and those kinds of things. And this year, that is July 29th through August 5th. It's not, you know, we like everyone to be there because we like to see your face and have you meet us and really have you understand how we think and how we work. But we are willing to do an online meeting with you to make up the key learnings around expectations and things, you know, before the semester starts. So that's not mandated in any way. So that's really, in a nutshell, how we work on that.
Okay. Okay, next question. Is an online master's degree viewed as meaningful or even a valid qualification by respectable employers in the U.S.? For example, from the perspective of a potential employer, does it really compare to enrolling in a 1 or 2 year program as a full-time student?
Great question. Great question. I love it. There are so many programs out there that have come on board that, you know, it's all online, come and get it from us. And frankly, there are a number of programs that farm out. They create modules online, they farm out the monitoring of the modules to adjunct faculty, pay them not very much, and at the end of the module stamp, you've got your master's and you're in. That's not how we work, and that's not who we are here at Western. So, number one, you are actually enrolled as a full-time student in a 2 to 5 year master's of arts and education here at a 4-year liberal arts university. The fact that we are that on the credential side and for the external visibility of your degree, we are accredited by the Higher Learning Commission of the North Central Association, which is a nationally accepted regional accreditation, university-wise. And a couple of the things, so as far as the validity of the master's from Western, it's absolutely the same as any other university campus in the U.S. I mean, obviously, you know, if one's going to Stanford or Princeton or Harvard, I mean, we have schools that have more clout, no doubt. It's that is a personal preference in terms of, you know, where one says one's degree is from. However, as far as the employer's stance, I was just in a meeting last week at the state level here in Colorado with the directors of human resources, who are the employers. They are the hirers of our candidates, and they're overarching. In fact, I was there with 3 other ed prep programs from Colorado, and they are not aware of us. We haven't necessarily placed our students in their particular districts, but a couple of things came out that I thought was very telling. One was, we want teachers who can teach. We're not going to fire a teacher because they don't know their content, i.e. math, science. You can always get that. We are going to fire a teacher because they can't talk to kids, they don't know how to do classroom management, they don't know how to write a lesson plan, they don't know how to differentiate for different learners, you know, etc. It's the pedagogical pieces that the employers are interested in. And so the other piece that they spoke to, and this did not apply to us because our program is year-long in a school. You know, I said, so tell me, in your experience with your student teachers, how long do your student teachers spend in your schools to actually learn how to do this? And they said, oh, not long enough, only 12 weeks. I said, well, you know, Western does a year-long, a complete academic year residency in a placement, which is what you're doing now. And that speaks volumes, because you come out already a first-year teacher. You know, you're no longer just as having had the student experience of the 12-week experience in a school. You've had an integrated experience of the residency as your first year. So as far as employability in the profession of teaching, it's not just the academic degree that counts. It's your practice, your ability to teach. And so I would bear that in mind as you look for a master's program in teaching, and think about employability. You know, the thing that there's several groups trying to improve educator preparation in this country, as you may well be aware. Much research being done on what makes effective educators, and the model that has been recommended is basically, it's like, oh, we're already doing that. Year-long clinical residency in a practicing school with a supportive mentor teacher as you're doing your online education coursework. That meshes with that experience. So you totally have that internalization of what it means to be a teacher and how to do this, how to do it. And so that is the model that we use. So that's the model that you would be stuck with in our program. So does that answer that? Great. And I don't think that's not common of most online schools.
Yeah.
Our final question, and then after this we'll just have like a free question discussion time. So this program seems to require a direct teaching component, but the teaching strategies, culture for English conversation classes in Korea are vastly different from those of other academic subjects in other regions, particularly the U.S. If we use our hours as an ETA to fulfill the classroom experience requirement of the degree, is that really applicable or useful to a future teaching or counseling position in the U.S.?
Absolutely. I would have to say, just simply because, as I mentioned before, I mean, it depends where you're looking to teach in the U.S. You can actively seek communities, as you well know, who have more of pockets of Asian immigrants or newcomers or community members, in which case your Korean experience would be exactly specifically applicable to the culture and the linguistic needs of that population and those families. That's number one. The second piece is, no matter what cultural background you've had, whether it's Korean and you find yourself in a highly Hispanic or Latino neighborhood, or a Romanian neighborhood, or a Russian neighborhood, the very fact that you are going through this experience yourself, that you're thinking about teaching literacy and language to kids who don't speak English as their first language, the very fact that you've had those kinds of experiences and you've seen the kinds of things that work and don't work, you'll be able to apply those principles to your work with kids of other language and cultural mixes. And that's golden for employability as a teacher in this country today. You know, my background happens to be in French and primarily in terms of education in Spanish and cultural and linguistic diversity within the Spanish-speaking world, which of course is the largest minority in this country, but that doesn't mean a lot when you've got a classroom or a school building with 47 languages represented in the building, you know. So I think anything you can do. So if you come out of your ETA experience with some very specific ESL strategies that work for you, you are ahead of the game in terms of applying, then marrying that with what you will be exposed to in these courses.
Yeah.
You know, all of our graduate students have a placement in a school. All of them are different. All of the dynamics of their classroom cultures are different. And so all of the coursework, whether it's specific to ESL or not, we have to approach through the lens of, well, my school doesn't quite do it that way, so how can I apply it? Or how can I tweak it? Or how can I adjust my perspective so that I can implement this with my students? And again, I encourage you, if you choose this program, to talk openly and frequently with your instructors around any assignments that might be posted that seem not to be a good fit for your placement. Because we do have that coming up from school districts here. You know, some districts are very strict on when you can administer a reading assessment, for example. And so, you know, we have to say, yeah, the purpose of this master's is to do it in a practical field. So, you know, let's work with our candidates for that. Okay. Does that jive? Does that answer the concern behind the question?
I think so.
Okay, so those were all the pre-written questions. Do you guys have any follow-up questions or anything you want to talk about regarding the program?
I have a question.
One. Oh, I think we're
David, go for it.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you. My question is, you said some grad students from Korea have done this program in the past.
Yes.
How does it factor in with the fact that Korean school years are different starting and ending times than Western school years?
Yeah. Good question.
Because we start in March and end at Christmas. Yeah.
Yes, quite. Again, I think this speaks to what I just was saying in terms of the flexibility and making sure that you approach the assignments. The assignments are all there to really stretch your thinking and how you can take a learning challenge and use it with your students. And that's something sort of we have to do in every classroom anyway. You know, you get a teacher guide to a textbook. You know, you've got to use this textbook. You've got a teacher guide. Well, I don't know that this lesson's going to fly with these kids. So how am I going to adapt this to my situation? So I was not actually, well, I was the instructor for Sam in his leadership year, in his post-license year. I wasn't an instructor for this particular student that I'm thinking of that was there while I was there. So I've just come to the end of my third year here at Western. So I'm a newbie, you know, as well. So I know that the instructors worked with the students in order to make those assignments applicable. It is going to be a question where, I mean, the good news is you will already have experience with your students coming into our program in August. You will already know the makeup of your student group. You will already be ahead in certain areas of learning. So I think it's just going to be a question of staying in touch with your your instructors, making sure that you fulfill those assignments or meet the intent of the assignments. I'm just also looking for another reference we had to someone who's applying from Taiwan. Sorry, they're cutting the grass and I can't hear. Hang on. wrong moment for that. So the three pieces, the program can be completed successfully, provided that you're able to find an experienced teacher to serve as your mentor. If you're doing the licensure year, you have to have a mentor. And the mentor will need to submit his or her resume or CV showing they have at least 3 years of teaching experience in that area that you're seeking license in. As part of the program, in English you won't be doing necessarily reading and math courses, but you'll be doing reading, which means that you'll need to be able to teach reading assignments as part of your coursework. So as long as you have access to kids and you have flexibility in the curriculum that you're expected to teach to be able to fold in these assignments, that'll work. And school calendar. Your school calendar needs to overlap to some degree with Western's course schedule so that you will have access to students while your courses are in session. There is some wiggle room because your instructors can give you extensions or open an assignment early to try to accommodate your schedule. The point being that what you'll probably want to do is sit with your advisor right at the very beginning of our semester and say, okay, these are the assignments, or just review them yourself. Say, these are the assignments in my courses that I need to apply with children. So I need to make sure that while I've got kids, I do these assignments. You might have to do them maybe a little out of order. And then there are some more, in quotes, theoretical assignments potentially, or reflection assignments that you could do after your school year ends, but still within our semester.
I see. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kate, you had a question.
I feel like that kind of answered my question. My question was a little bit similar. I was going to say, for particularly the curriculum I teach, there are specific times in the school year where I am required, for example, speaking tests take up a really big chunk of my schedule. And so if we were given some sort of assignment that required using specific techniques in class that didn't align with the goal of getting my students ready for their speaking tests and then employing the speaking test, I was kind of curious as to how that would work. But I feel like you kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yes. And I think, I do know that So depending on the licensure area that you're seeking, elementary particularly and English also for obvious reasons have a pretty heavy component of understanding the literacy process with all the modalities. So the reading is hit pretty hard, writing, speaking, and listening. And so all of those modalities are hit in the standards for teaching language arts. And certainly for the elementary teaching license standards. So there will be times when you will be expected to administer writing tests as well, or reading tests, those kinds of things. Just pre-assessments, formative type of assessments. So again, it'd be a question of seeing, how closely do my speaking tests align maybe with the reading test. Maybe doing some kind of a comparison of the different testing for modalities to establish baseline and growth in skills. That kind of a conversation could happen with your instructor, and we could see if we could accommodate those assignments.
So for the already certified teaching program, can that be done in 1 year, or is that also more than 1 year?
It can be done in 1 year. It's a busy one, but it can, yes. It's a 30 credit, so it usually splits something like 14 one semester, or depending on the courses you choose. It can be 15 in the fall, 15 in the spring, or 14, 16. Again, the assignments and the way they're delivered and the way you're expected to respond to them are all as I've described. So it folds into your teaching. It just adds another layer of work to your academic year, if you like. And depending on your placement, having spent a moment or two abroad on my own, I understand that it can either be that you have zero personal time or that you have quite a lot of personal time. And so, I think you need to sort of look at your own life as well and say, what is realistic for me to do here? But it definitely is laid out to where you can, yeah.
And how, again, how imperative is the co-teacher thing again? Because I don't really have any, and I only see my kids once a week, so that growth thing kind of, like, sometimes I won't see my kids for 4 weeks at a time. Just weird schedule changes and things like that. So
would you consider yourself teaching full time then, or are you just teaching?
Yeah, it's full time. It's just like things just get screwed up here a lot. Like we were talking about tests and things like that.
Yeah.
Like I've seen my Wednesday class every single week. I've had them 15 times this semester, but my Thursday class I've seen 6 times this entire semester.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah, every day
schedule changes and
classes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where I'd be concerned about, like, I can't really see, like, oh, how much have they grown? Yeah.
Well, I guess I think this is a deeper conversation specific to your situation, in the sense of, is this elementary age range, or is it a particular content that you're working with?
I'm secondary English, but I'm history certified.
Okay. Okay, so that's Kelsey, isn't it? Yeah, so secondary English, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so secondary, okay. So I could get back with my reading and my literacy specialist on that, and get back with you in terms of some examples, maybe, of evidence pieces that you could submit.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. In other words, what would count as evidence?
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, because my kids don't have any grades or anything in my class, so.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So there again, that could be something that you could have as a separate layer, in the sense of demonstrating your ability to implement some form of an assessment process for your students to demonstrate growth. It could be the development, creation, design, implementation of a growth plan.
Yeah.
Something like that. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
The other question I would have, Kelsey, is do they evaluate you? Do you have an evaluation that's meaningful, either halfway through or at the end of the year or anything like that? Do you have anything from last year that would serve as a baseline for your performance?
Kelsey, don't you have videotape of your class?
No.
Because they videotaped my class when I was at your school, so.
I've had no teacher ever come to my. I think I had like a teacher come to my class once, but I've never been like formally observed or anything like that. I have my like observations from student teaching in America, but.
Yeah. Well, that might be something to think about. I wonder if on your end you could see if you could reach out and see if there's a teacher who maybe is more experienced, or an administrator or a lead or director somewhere in this building who might be willing to partner with you and help you with that.
I think probably would.
I just don't know how often would they. You know what I mean? That's the question. Like I would feel comfortable asking. I have like 2 teachers that I would feel comfortable asking, but
yeah.
A year.
So I would recommend that you would want something to come into the program with, to say, this is where I am, and we could advise on a personal level, Kelsey, in terms of let's talk more specifically about your situation and what you see as your personal professional goals for improvement. So we can nail it down to 2 or 3 things, and then you could ask someone to come in and observe you now on those things, and come out with a baseline evaluation and assessment on those areas, maybe based on a rubric of some kind. And then as you go through the year, we develop the plan through your coursework in terms of how are you going to show growth on those goals yourself. And then maybe at the end of the first semester, have them come in and evaluate you again, and see what's changed, maybe adjust the goals, next semester come in, beginning and end, something like that.
So is this the TAP rubric or just general?
Is it? I beg your pardon, I didn't hear the word.
The TAP rubric or?
Well, I would say it would be something, we tend to reference the teacher quality standards here in Colorado, which are based on the national teacher quality standards. And so we would, I mean, which are quite extensive. There are only 6 standards, but within them there's elements, and within each element there's a benchmark. So we could go through that. You would go through that on the application process with your advisor and say, well, I think I want to identify these areas as areas I want to work on for growth.
Okay.
So we can make it specific.
Okay.
I have sort of a unique situation from the other ETAs, partly because I'm actually ending my ETA time, and I'm moving on to teach at an international school here in Korea. And I'm sort of I'll be teaching basically outside of what my license area is. I'll be teaching middle and high school ELA, but my licensure is in French and ESL. So I'm kind of confused about like which direction I might want to go in, because I do have that licensure, but at the same time it's not actually what I'll be teaching next year. So yeah.
Well, to what extent when you come out of next year, or when you move into your next coming, to what extent in the next 3 to 5 years do you see yourself teaching French and ESL, or do you see yourself teaching English language arts? In other words, would it be helpful to your career to get an endorsement in secondary English to add to your bucket, in which case the first year licensure year coursework could be specific to secondary English, which again would have, flow overs into other areas.
And it is something I'm considering because I do know that the situation for French education in the U.S. is kind of off and on, and I am considering more and more of continuing to teach in international schools.
Yes.
So.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's something that we might need to work with you on an individual basis, and just kind of brainstorm some options for you around that. And really your option is, if you want to boost your credentials with an English secondary endorsement, then you do the 43 credit masters. If you want to keep your licensure area the same, but build on your skills in general, or targeted to reading, or targeted to something that would be helpful in the English area, you could do the 30 credit.
Okay. All right.
So, I have something I want to throw out, and I do have to close. I do have a 9 o'clock. Believe it or not, like I say, the day's starting, and I have summons. But is the time frame. If you're interested for this coming academic year, we need to get on it as far as the application. If you are things that we need to take time, fingerprint by the Colorado Department of Education.
So,
sure you've had
Arizona fingerprint work.
And potentially, doing the credit masters,
Dr. Hold on, just can everyone hear Mike? There's a except for Dr. Jenkins. There's a really
okay.
Okay, sorry. One more time. Go.
The application process, we are accepting people every day, and we will be accepting people, well, assuming they're excellent, through July at the latest, kind of. So that gives us pretty much, 6 weeks-ish to get the application process going, and have your transcripts, have your fingerprint evidence, or have your initial license evidence, letters recommendation from our forms, complete a graduate application online, proof content. There's a few things that you have to do if you're interested, and you'll want to consider and sort of come to a conclusion pretty quickly in order to get that underway. And again, I can when I email you, Courtney, I'll email you not only the financial aid advisors information. I'll also email you our admissions person in the building here, Cassie Mason, who will be your initial point of contact. But it can all happen, it's all online application stuff, and hopefully you've got some copies of transcripts, if not originals, in your hand that we can get started with. If you'd like to go that way. You also have my email. I'm happy to set up a personal chat anytime if other questions come up. If you're going for the 30 credit Masters in Educator Effectiveness, the part of the application process is an interview with an academic advisor to help set you on that course that works for you. So, you're not like stranded out there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dr. Jenkins, thank you so much for all this information and just spending time with us.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. I wish I was there, actually, really. It's very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope to hear from you again, but if I don't, I wish you all the very best in your adventures and your life.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.